I heard my own smart speaker whisper a word I never said. When I look back, that was the moment everything shifted inside my home quietly, like a floorboard giving under my feet. If you're watching this, tell me where you're from or what time it is. For months, I had been moving through my days on autopilot, brewing the same coffee, walking the same hallway, pretending everything at home was fine. My daughter Claire had moved in temporarily with her husband Mark, and what I hoped would feel like warmth instead felt like we were three strangers waiting for someone to speak first. Even the walls seemed to hold their breath. That night, the house was unusually still. Rain tapped lightly against the windows, a faint, repetitive sound that should have been comforting. I remember sitting at the edge of the living room sofa, scrolling through the previous day's emails, when the smart speaker blinked blue. I didn't say anything. No one did. Yet it activated with a soft chime, like a polite cough in an empty theater. Then it whispered my name, not loudly, not clearly, just close enough to feel intentional. Ethan. The voice wasn't mine. It wasn't Claire's. It wasn't even Mark's. It sounded like someone trying to imitate familiarity. Someone practicing the tone but not the emotion behind it. I sat perfectly still, the glow from the TV casting thin shadows across the floorboards. For a split second, I wondered if I had imagined it. Mark walked in at the exact moment the light ring dimmed. He noticed my expression and gave his typical half-smirk. "Technology acts up," he said casually, as if the speaker whispering my name was as common as a thermostat beeping. Claire walked in behind him, eyes tired, avoiding mine. She didn't comment at all. Later, after they went upstairs, I replayed the event in my head. Every detail bothered me: the timing, the imitation, the unnatural closeness of the voice. So, I opened the smart home app. I wasn't expecting anything unusual. But when I checked the activity log, a small red icon blinked next to the timestamp. Audio activity deleted, not missing. Deleted. A 12-minute segment cut clean from the system. Like someone was sweeping the floor, hoping no one noticed the dust. I sat up straighter, scrolling back and forth through the log entries. The deletion wasn't random. It happened at 2:14 a.m., a time when everyone in the house should have been asleep. And then, another deletion at 2:26 a.m., 12 minutes apart. Deliberate, controlled. I screenshotted the page. My hand steady even though my heartbeat wasn't. Paper moment. Screenshot, audio activity missing. 2:14 to 26 a.m. Action. Deleted user, unknown. I stared at that blank section longer than I needed to. I'd always believed that silence was simple an absence of noise, a break in conversation. But that night, the silence carried texture. It carried intent. Someone wanted those 12 minutes erased, and that someone had access to my home's devices. The next morning, sunlight filled the kitchen in soft shades of gold. You'd think daylight would make the whole thing feel smaller, like a weird glitch I overreacted to. But it didn't. Claire moved quietly, avoiding eye contact, stirring her tea in slow circles. Mark typed on his phone, dismissive as usual. "You sleep okay?" I asked carefully. Mark answered before she did. "We did." "Why?" I studied his face. Calm to calm. "No reason," I said. "Just curious." Not a house felt different. Not Hannah just watched. I kept replaying the whisper in my mind, the way it shaped my name without meaning it. I'd lived long enough to recognize when something in a home shifted, when a boundary bent in a way you couldn't explain yet. And something had definitely bent. That evening, when everyone went to their rooms, I returned to the device logs. This time, I looked deeper: manual entries, system permissions, background processes, and near the bottom of the list, in a faded gray font that was easy to overlook, I found a line I hadn't noticed earlier. Last admin accessed, 2:13 a.m. 1 minute before the first deletion, my breath caught, not dramatically, but sharply, like I'd just stepped into cold water. Someone had accessed my system at exactly the time I was asleep, right before the missing audio. Someone who knew my passwords. Someone inside this house. I sat back slowly, letting the weight of that settle. The smart speaker's light blinked again. Just once, soft but visible from the corner of my eye, as if acknowledging me, as if waiting. And for the first time, I realized the house wasn't just quiet, it was listening. Something in me knew this was only the beginning, a beginning I didn't choose, but one I couldn't ignore. I played the recording expecting to hear a stranger. I wish I had. When the voice finally came through the speaker, I felt something inside me settle into silence. Not peace, just clarity. If you're watching this, tell me your first name or what time it is where you are. I sat alone in the living room. Blinds half closed, morning light slipping through in thin silver lines. The house felt heavier than usual, as if the walls were carrying a conversation they weren't willing to repeat. I opened the folder I'd created the night before, just a simple directory titled Quiet Notes. Like a list someone kept before a long trip. Inside it was the first audio file. The system automatically backed up before deleting segments. I didn't expect much. Maybe the whisper had been a glitch, some half-formed algorithm trying to guess my commands. But the moment I hit play, the room seemed to lean inward. The audio started with soft static, then footsteps, slow, pacing, impatient. And then a voice spoke, low and irritated. He won't notice. He never does. My heart dropped in that slow, sinking way you feel when someone calls your name in a tone you can't place, because I recognized the voice immediately. It wasn't a stranger. It was Mark. I paused the playback and instinctively glanced toward the staircase. It was empty, still, quiet. Claire was out running errands. Mark was in the guest room, pretending to work from his laptop like he always did, headphones on, tapping aggressively at keys that didn't need that much force. I pressed play again. Just give it time, Mark continued. He doesn't pay attention. He just drifts. The words weren't cruel in volume, only in intention. They sounded practiced, as if he'd said them before, maybe even rehearsed them. I listened without moving, letting the weight of each sentence settle. My mind replayed small moments, Mark's impatience, Claire's shrinking voice, the strange tension during dinner, the way Mark always joked about old habits I didn't have at first. I wanted to believe the recording was taken out of context. Everyone complains about family behind closed doors. But something in his tone didn't feel like frustration. It felt like strategy. And then Claire's voice appeared faintly in the background. Not clear, just a whisper of breath, like she was trying not to say anything. "Honey, he's trying," she murmured. Mark laughed, a short, dismissive sound. "He's blind to everything. We just have to keep moving." The audio ended abruptly, like someone cut the recording with a blade. I stared at the waveform on the screen for a long time. The sharp drop into silence, feeling more violent than any raised voice could have been. I replayed the file once, then twice. Each time my pulse steadied, not out of calm, but out of resolve. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Anger is loud. What I felt was quiet too quiet. Like a door slowly closing behind me, I printed a transcript of the recording, because paper doesn't glitch. Paper doesn't erase itself. Paper doesn't pretend. Paper moment. Printed transcript, Mark. He won't notice. He never does. Claire faint. He's trying. Mark. He's blind to everything. We just have to keep moving. I held the paper in my hand and studied it. People reveal themselves in documents in ways their eyes try to hide. I wasn't sure whether Claire was protecting him, protecting herself, or protecting me. But her voice in the background sounded small, like someone carrying truths too heavy for her frame. Later that afternoon, Mark passed through the living room. His shoulders loose, relaxed. He hummed softly, something upbeat and careless, like a man whose world was comfortably falling into place. He didn't look at me, just grabbed a drink from the fridge. "How's your day going?" I asked, watching him carefully. He smirked, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. "Smooth, yours?" "Quiet," I said. He nodded, satisfied with that answer, and left the room. It was only after he walked upstairs that I realized something unsettling. He wasn't surprised. Not by my tone, not by my interest, not by my stillness. It was as if he expected me to be exactly as he had described, unaware, drifting. Blind. But I wasn't blind anymore, and I wasn't drifting that evening. I created a new folder, this one hidden behind system files. I named it archive_01. Inside it, I placed the transcript and the audio file. And I added a time-stamped note. If something feels wrong, it probably is. As I saved the document, the speaker blinked again just once. Not random. Not accidental. As if responding. And I knew with unsettling certainty that this house was going to tell me much more. I've lived through loud arguments, broken promises, difficult seasons, but nothing prepared me for a dinner where silence felt like a fourth person sitting with us, listening. When I look back now, that was the night the house finally showed me something I couldn't ignore. First name or what time it is where you are. Dinner with Claire and Mark used to be easy, simple meals, light conversation, small jokes. But over the past weeks, it had turned into something else, something tight around the edges. That night, the air in the dining room felt heavy. Like we were all moving through a quiet fog we couldn't acknowledge. Claire set the table. Her hands steady, but her eyes distant. She'd been drifting in and out of focus lately, smiling at the right moments, nodding at the right beats, but never really present. Mark walked in behind her, shoulders loose, wearing that same comfortable confidence that didn't match the temperature in the room. We sat down. And the first sound wasn't anyone's voice, it was the faint scrape of forks against ceramic plates. 3 people eating dinner, pretending nothing was wrong, pretending silence was normal. But silence has texture when something beneath it is dying. How was work? I asked gently, trying to break the tension in a way that didn't feel intrusive. Claire blinked like she was waking up. Fine, she said. Too quickly, Mark spoke for her before she could expand. Busy. She's been under pressure. It's nothing. Nothing. He always used that word, nothing. Relax. Don't overthink. Not a big deal. Words meant to shut doors, not open them. Claire's hand paused midway through cutting her food. It was only for a fraction of a second, but I noticed. She noticed me noticing, and quickly forced a smile that didn't belong to her. I didn't push. I've learned that pushing makes people retreat. Instead, I let the silence return, watching how Mark seemed perfectly comfortable inside it, like someone sitting in a room built for him. The smart speaker on the kitchen. Counter blinked twice, not activated, not spoken to, just blinked once. Then again, Mark didn't even look at it. Claire did. Her eyes flicked toward it, then toward me, then back to her plate. Something behind her eyes tightened. A quiet panic she tried to swallow. I kept eating, but inside. My mind was mapping the scene the way someone maps a crime board expressions. Body shifts, patterns, timing. Mark cleared his throat. By the way, he said casually, I'll be stepping outside for a call at around 7:40. Just work stuff. He didn't need to tell me that. He'd never needed to explain his habits before. But now, suddenly, he was giving details. I checked the clock on the wall. 7:28 p.m. He was preparing me, preparing all of us. When dinner ended, he stood, stretched, and walked outside with his phone already at his ear. The door clicked softly behind him. Claire remained seated, staring at her untouched tea. The silence grew heavier again, not awkward, just revealing. You okay? I asked softly. She nodded, but her chin trembled. I'm fine. She wasn't fine. None of us were fine. I wanted to reach out, but something told me she wasn't ready to talk, not yet. Instead, I walked to the kitchen counter and opened the smart home dashboard. The activity timeline popped up, neat columns of timestamps and alerts. At 7:42 p.m., right on schedule, a new entry appeared. Outgoing call detected, device unknown. I clicked it. A blank screen appeared. No number, no contact name, just time and duration. 0 hours, 6 minutes, and 24 seconds. My stomach tightened. That wasn't normal. Not even close. Outgoing calls from a home device should never be untraceable. This wasn't a bug. It was a choice. Paper moment, call log. Outgoing call 7:42 p.m. duration, 6 meters, 24's caller ID. Unavailable. I printed the entry and stared at the crisp paper. even printed, the blank caller ID felt like someone hiding behind a curtain, whispering from a place they shouldn't be. When Mark came back in, his expression was brighter, lighter, rehearsed. He didn't ask what I was doing. He didn't check the printer. He just walked past us with the confidence of someone who believed he was in control of the entire script. But he didn't. See me slip the printed call log into my folder, and he definitely didn't see the notification. That appeared on my phone seconds later. Motion detected, side entrance door. The side entrance, the one no one uses. The one that only opens when something, or someone, doesn't want to be seen. A quiet chill ran through me. Something was happening in my house, and it had just begun. I was sitting alone in the living room when my smart speaker used my voice to turn off the lights. I hadn't moved. I hadn't spoken. But it spoke for me. If you're watching this, tell me what device you're on or what time it is where you are. The house was dim. Early evening shadows stretching across the hardwood floor as the sun dipped behind the trees. I was reading an article on my tablet. Nothing dramatic, nothing heavy, when the lights flicked off in a clean, decisive snap. Just like that, the room dissolved into dusk. A soft chime followed. "Okay," turning off lights, the speaker said in my voice. My voice, not a rough imitation, not a glitchy version. My exact tone, calm, low, slightly tired. The kind of voice you'd hear from a person who'd spent most of their life avoiding unnecessary conflict. I didn't breathe for a moment. The kind of stillness where even your heartbeat seems to pause. Waiting for an explanation, I leaned forward slowly, watching the faint halo glow around the speaker. Its ring pulsed in a way I'd never seen before. A kind of slow breathing inhale, exhale, as if it was waiting for me to respond. "Replay last command," I whispered. The speaker beeped, then said, "Voice command not found, not detected, not recorded," which meant the command wasn't verbal. It was injected. I turned the lights back on manually and opened the device's settings on my tablet. A list of voice prints appeared: mine, Claire's, and Mark's. 3 registered profiles. 3 people allowed to command the system. But the entry I needed, the one that triggered the lights, didn't have a name. It just said, "User, synthetic match, 88%. Authorized synthetic. Not human." I rubbed my thumb across the screen, feeling the weight of it. If someone could mimic my voice with enough accuracy to trigger commands, then the whisper I heard 2 nights before wasn't a glitch. It was deliberate. Claire came downstairs a few minutes later, her hair tied back, eyes tired. "Everything okay?" she asked. I looked at her more closely, searching for signs she might know something. She looked thinner these days, always a bit tense, like she was bracing for someone else's reaction. "Did you use the speaker earlier?" I asked gently. She shook her head. "No, I was upstairs. What about Mark?" She hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second, but hesitation is loud when everything else is quiet. "I don't think so," she said finally. I didn't respond. I didn't accuse. I didn't explain the synthetic voice log. People tell the truth better when you're not forcing them to. A notification appeared on my tablet while she was standing there. New voice samples saved. Speaker calibration, time 6:18 p.m. Hadn't initiated any calibration. Claire saw the notification and frowned. "Is something wrong with it?" she asked. "Maybe," I said. "I'll figure it out." She nodded and left the room. When she was gone, I forwarded the entire log to Leo. If there was anyone who understood digital signatures, it was him. He'd done security audits for companies far more private than a suburban home. 10 minutes later, he called. "That's not a calibration," he said without greeting. "Someone's feeding it samples. Samples. Voice training samples. Someone's teaching your system to sound like you." I felt my jaw tighten, not in anger, but in understanding. Something inside the house was being carefully shaped, carefully rehearsed. Who would do that? Leo asked. I didn't answer, because I already knew who would benefit from a house. It's full of artificially generated commands in my voice, and he was upstairs. A moment after the call ended, I received an email from Leo containing his preliminary analysis. Paper moment. Email from Leo Ethan. The samples don't match your natural vocal signature. There's digital stitching. Someone is using pre-recorded snippets to build phrases. This isn't accidental. I read the email twice, the way someone rereads a warning label before touching something dangerous upstairs. Footsteps moved, measured, unhurried. Mark S. footsteps. The house recognized proximity. It adjusted. The speaker pulsed again with that slow, steady glow, as if acknowledging his presence. At 3:11 a.m. that night, I woke up to a faint noise. Not a crash, not a shout. Just the gentle activation chime of the smart speaker downstairs. Then, a whisper followed my voice. Not asleep. Not dreaming. A voice command. Spoken by someone or something pretending to be me. Begin recording. Hair on my arms lifted. Someone was recording the house, and they were using my voice to do it. I always believed doors were simple. Things with hinges, a lock. But that week, a door in my house told me the truth long before anyone else did. Country, or what time it is right now. The morning after hearing my own voice whisper, begin recording at 3:11 a.m. I woke up with that same strange stillness sitting on my chest. The house looked ordinary, sunlight drifting across the hallway. Quiet footsteps from upstairs, the faint smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen. But silence never returns to innocence once you've heard it speak. I opened the smart home dashboard again. Every device had a timestamp, every door a sensor, every room a sequence. And even though I'd never paid attention to those little icons before, now they felt like the only honest witnesses inside my home. I tapped into the door activity log. The entries scrolled into view clean, neat timestamps. Most listed user, unknown, a simple gray text that looked harmless. But the time caught me. 0:37 a.m., side entrance door opened. 0:38 a.m., side entrance door closed. I stared at the screen. I hadn't used that door in months. Claire wouldn't have used it, stuck sometimes. And Mark always used the front entry loudly, as if every door was competing to announce him. I opened the audio logs for that hour. Nothing. No sound. Just a quiet void, but the system had reported. Motion, something or someone had passed through that. Door, my throat tightened the way it does when you try to swallow. Claire walked into the kitchen while I was staring at the screen. She had that quiet, unsure smile she'd been wearing a lot lately, polite on the surface. But her eyes told a different story. "You want some tea?" she asked. "No thanks," I said gently. "Did you get up around midnight?" She shook her head. "No, why?" "Just checking something." Her gaze lingered on me in that searching way children have when they sense something but can't name it. I didn't want her to worry, not yet. I wanted information, not panic, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she already knew more than she let on. After she left, I walked to the side entrance. The door looked untouched, clean, still. But when I brushed my fingers over the lock, I felt a faint warmth. Not heat, just the kind of residual warmth metal holds when someone has touched it recently. I stepped outside. A small patch of dirt next to the walkway had been disturbed, a scuff mark, faint but visible. Not a shoe print, more like someone shifted their weight awkwardly before moving. I knelt down, touching the cold surface with 2 fingers. The soil crumbled slightly, fresh. Someone stood here. I didn't know who, or why, or how they got in without waking anyone, but I knew for certain the house hadn't imagined it. Devices don't lie about motion unless someone teaches them to. When I returned inside, I went back to the dashboard and exported the door report. That was when I saw something I had missed earlier. 0:37 a.m. No linked user detected. No linked user. Meaning, the system recognized that someone entered, but couldn't identify them as a registered profile. Paper moment. Door activity report. Entry. 0:37 a.m. side entrance. Opened user. No linked user detected. Motion sensor triggered. Yasai printed the report and held it in my hands. Paper feels different when you're reading something the house tried to bury. More real, more final. I placed the report in my archive folder, each page forming a quiet spine of truth. I wasn't collecting evidence of a crime, not yet. I was collecting proof that I wasn't losing my mind. That afternoon, Mark wandered into the living room, stretching his arms like someone who'd had a long, comfortable sleep. He eyed me briefly before grabbing the remote from the coffee table. "You look tired," he said, with an odd blend of concern and amusement. I forced a small smile. "Long night," he chuckled. "You should sleep earlier. This place makes weird noises." Weird noises. The exact phrase someone uses when they want you to doubt your senses. But his mistake was assuming. I wasn't listening anymore. Later that night, I reviewed the security audio again, but this time, I cleaned the background frequencies manually. And at the very end of the 037 timestamp, barely audible, was the softest sound. Breathing, not mine, not Claire's, not Mark's. Someone had been in the side hallway. Breathing. The house hadn't lied. Someone was moving through it at night, someone we hadn't invited, and for the first time, I realized the smart speaker might not be the only thing recording us. I could always tell when my daughter was hiding something. Not because she lied badly. Claire wasn't a liar by nature. It was the silence between her words that gave her away. That evening, her silence felt heavier than her footsteps on the stairs. If you're watching this, tell me what city you're in or what time it is where you are. I was standing at the kitchen counter, staring down at the printed door report from the night before. The edges of the paper were still sharp. I hadn't handled it enough times to soften it, though I'd read it at least a dozen times. A door doesn't open itself. Motion sensors don't breathe on their own. And yet, Claire came downstairs like nothing was wrong. She poured herself water, her hand trembling just slightly. She thought she hit it well, but I saw it. She always had this small teller thumb pressed against the knuckle of her index finger when she was holding something in. "You okay?" I asked gently. She nodded quickly, too quickly. "Yeah, just tired." Her voice wasn't tense, it was restrained, careful, like someone choosing each word out of fear it might slice through the air the wrong way. She leaned against the counter, eyes lowered. "You barely slept," I said. She shrugged. "I'm fine, Dad." "Really?" But the quiet in her voice wasn't fine. It was the kind of quiet people hold in places they think no one will notice. I wanted to push. I wanted to ask what was going on, why she looked like someone holding a secret that didn't belong to her. But something in her expression stopped me. Fear not of me, but of what honesty might break open. Instead, I took a step back and softened my tone. "If something's bothering you, you know you can tell me." Her lips parted, as if the truth was on its way out. But then footsteps approached from the hallway, and she froze like a candle flame suddenly deprived of air. Mark entered the kitchen. He looked fresh, rested, untouched by any of the tension hanging in the rooms around him. He wrapped an arm lazily around Claire's shoulders. "There you are," he said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "We've got that thing to look at, remember?" Her body stiffened subtly, but unmistakably. "Yes," she whispered. Their eyes didn't meet. She didn't look at him. She looked at the floor, her fingers curling tighter around the glass in her hand. Something was wrong. Mark glanced at the paper in my hands. "What's that?" "Nothing," I said. "Just checking the system logs." He raised an eyebrow. "Still fussing with that thing? You should let it go, Ethan. These smart devices get confused sometimes." A line I'd heard before. A line meant to dismiss, to shrink, to minimize. "I'll look into it," I replied. Claire set down her glass too quickly. The sound startled her. I'll be upstairs," she said, almost stumbling over the words. "I need to finish something." Slipped past Mark without touching him. Without waiting for him, without looking back when she was gone, Mark gave me the kind of smile someone gives a person they think they've already won against. "You really shouldn't worry so much," he said. "It's not good for you." He walked out before I could respond. That was the moment. I knew Claire was carrying a truth too heavy for her shoulders alone, so that night, after everyone was asleep, I sat at my desk and connected an old USB drive to my computer. not the cloud backup, not the system archive, something offline, something untouched. I spent hours downloading every log, every audio entry, every sensor report. My hands moved methodically, but my mind kept circling Claire's expression: fear, guilt, exhaustion. A quiet storm behind her eyes. When the download finished, I labeled the drive home_audio_archive_v1. Paper moment, USB backup folder created. Home_audio_archive_v1 full device logs. 62 files. I ejected the drive and placed it in the drawer. Beside my bed, somewhere only I touched. As I closed the drawer, a faint creak echoed from the hallway. Not loud, not threatening, just enough to let me know someone was awake. I walked to the door quietly. Claire was standing at the end of the hallway, her shoulders hunched, her hands shaking. She didn't see me at first. She was whispering to herself, trying to calm her breathing. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered to no one I could see. "Why won't you stop?" A chill moved through me. She turned slightly, the dim hallway light outlining her silhouette. Her eyes were glistening. She looked like someone breaking quietly behind a locked door. She didn't know I was watching. She didn't know I heard everything. And she didn't know the truth she was afraid of would be revealed in the next recording, the one I would open. Tomorrow, a recording that had been locked. Until now. I've heard my name spoken in anger and love, in confusion, but nothing prepared me for hearing it whispered in the dark by someone who shouldn't have been awake. When I replay that moment now, it still crawls under my skin. Age or what time it is where you are. The morning started quietly. It's the kind of soft gray light that makes a house feel almost peaceful. Almost I had barely slept. Claire's hallway whispers haunted the edges of my thoughts all night. Fear leaves fingerprints, and her fear was everywhere: her posture, her voice, the silence she carried like a weight. I opened my laptop and finally accessed the locked audio file that had resisted me for days. Leo had sent me a tiny code patch, just a string of digits with a short message. "Try this. It bypasses surface encryption." I didn't ask how he had it. Sometimes people help you because they see more clearly than you do. The file opened with a soft click. The waveform appeared across the screen, a river of uneasy peaks and dips. It was recorded at 2:03 a.m. 2 nights earlier, the same night the side entrance had opened. I pressed play at first. I heard nothing but atmospheric noise or moving, maybe a vent. Then footsteps. Slow, soft, the hesitant kind of steps someone takes when they don't want to wake anyone. A few seconds later, I heard my name, Ethan. The voice wasn't mine, and it wasn't Claire's, it was Mark. He said my name with a strange tone, half irritation, half calculation, not calling out to me, not trying to wake me. It sounded like someone talking about me, not to me. Then another sound, something I had missed at first. A faint, muffled sob. Claire? It had to be. The sound was too small, too fractured to be anything else. My pulse slowed, not speeding up the way fear usually does. I've always been like this when something truly wrong appears. My mind goes quiet, focused, sharp. I pressed my headphones closer to my ears and listened again. Just be patient. He'll get used to it. He won't fight. My stomach turned. Claire's voice came next, fragile and cracking. "Please stop talking about him like that. He's trying." A short silence followed. Then fabric shifted, maybe someone moving closer. "You can't protect him forever," Mark murmured. The tone didn't match a husband speaking to a wife. It matched someone strategizing. Someone preparing. Someone rehearsing. I paused the recording and leaned back in my chair. The room felt colder than it should have been. I stared at the screen for a long moment, trying to understand the shape of the situation. Claire wasn't the conspirator. She was the witness, maybe even the victim. Mark's confidence, his comfort in silence, the deletions, the synthetic voice commands, everything narrowed into a single truth. He wasn't improvising. He was planning. When the recording ended, I opened my notebook, the one I had started to document the moments that didn't fit. My handwriting felt tighter than usual as I wrote, "They think I don't hear them." Notebook entry, Ethan's note. "They think I don't hear them." Midnight whisper? Claire crying? Mark planning something? Review side entrance again. I closed the notebook slowly, feeling the weight of those words. Later that day, Claire approached me in the living room. She looked pale, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Dad, did you hear anything last night?" she asked. Her eyes begged for something reassurance, rescue, or maybe relief that she wasn't alone in this anymore. I shook my head gently. Just the usual why. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could answer, Mark walked into the room. Claire stopped immediately. She stepped back, eyes lowering, breathing changing. The transformation was small, but unmistakable. Mark smiled broadly. "Everything good here?" "Fine," Claire whispered. She walked away before I could stop her. Mark's eyes lingered on me, like he was trying to calculate what I knew. And for the first time, I realized something chilling. He didn't fear confrontation. He feared exposure. That night, around midnight, while I sat reviewing the file again, my laptop chimed. A small alert window popped up. Locked file. Second unlocked. Hadn't touched anything. The file opened itself more, and in the reflection of the dark screen, I saw movement behind me, a shadow. Shifting, someone had come home earlier than expected. Someone who didn't want me listening. I tried every password I've ever used, my birthday, Claire's old Wi-Fi codes, even the passphrases I swore I'd never forget. None of them opened the locked file. When I finally learned what did, it felt like someone had been studying my house. And me. From or what time it is right now. The file sat on my screen like a sealed confession to locked. I'd unlocked the first part by using Leo's patch, but the second section was different. It demanded a passphrase, not numbers. Something spoken. Something familiar. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Claire and Mark had gone out for groceries, a rare moment when the walls weren't listening to 3 separate heartbeats. The silence made it easier to think. I opened the master log and scrolled through dozens of voice snippets the system had collected commands.
Background chatter. Accidental audio captures.
Most were ordinary. Set a timer. Play music. Turn on porch lights. But then, I noticed a small pattern, 3 phrases repeated multiple times across different days. Always spoken by Mark. Give it time. He'll accept it eventually. He won't notice. These weren't commands. These were rehearsals. Warm-ups. A person training their tone to sound casual, confident, certain. I leaned back in my chair, replaying those snippets slowly. The way he said he'll accept it eventually unnerved me. It wasn't frustration, it was assurance. The kind of voice someone uses when they've already planned the ending of someone else's story. I highlighted the phrases and opened a blank notepad, typing them one by one. The house felt colder the closer I looked. Patterns emerge when you stop pretending they're coincidences. If the file needed a phrase, something spoken often, confidently it was going to be one of these. I tried the first. Give it time. Access denied. Second, he won't notice. Access denied. I paused before entering the third. He'll accept it eventually. Well, there was something cruel about that line. Not loud cruelty. The kind that feels polite on the surface and devastating underneath. I typed it in. The screen blinked. A soft beep. A loading bar. 2. My stomach tightened. It was opening. That meant one thing: Mark had used that phrase enough for the system to identify it as a recognized passkey. The progress bar froze at 81%. Then a warning flashed. Unauthorized playback attempt logged. Unauthorized. By whom? The house had recognized that the file shouldn't be opened, not by me. Someone else had permission. Someone who wasn't here right now. Or someone who had been here when the phrase was set. A soft knock on the front door made me flinch. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I approached, I saw a familiar face through the glass. Mason, the quiet neighbor from 2 houses down. He held a small package. "This was on your porch," he said when I opened the door. "Thought you'd want it before the rain hits?" His smile was nervous, his eyes flicking toward the hallway behind me, as if he expected someone else to appear. Thanks, I said gently. Everything okay? He hesitated, then shook his head. Actually, I heard something last night. Not my business, so I didn't want to say anything. But it sounded like someone arguing in your side yard. Late. My pulse steadied, not rising, not falling. Just sharpening. What time? I asked. Close to midnight, he said. I heard your name. Twice. The air between us tightened. Did you see anyone? No, he whispered, but I heard a man. And someone else. Someone upset. Claire. He didn't need to say it. Her fear from the night before rose like a shadow in my memory. Thanks, Mason, I said softly. Let me know if you hear anything else. When he left, I returned to my office. The screen was still displaying the stalled unlocking process. A new message had appeared. Notice, admin user notified. Admin user, there was only one person who'd been granted admin status besides me. Mark, I scrolled down through the log of user actions. There, buried at the bottom, was a new entry, remote notification sent. M.Benson file, access attempt by E.Ross. Someone wasn't just trying to hide things. Someone wanted to know exactly when I found them. I took a slow breath and jotted down the phrase on a sticky note. He'll accept it. Eventually, passphrase. Paper moment. Sticky note. Possible passphrase, he'll accept it eventually. I placed the note into my folder. The way a detective saves a clue that feels insignificant until it becomes everything. The file remained stuck at 81, humming with unfinished secrets. Then, abruptly, the screen went black. A new window appeared. Admin override in progress. I stared at the words as a cold weight settled in my chest. Someone was trying to close the file. While I was still inside it, I didn't panic when the screen went black. Panic is loud. What I felt was quieter, colder-like, a hand closing slowly around a doorknob. When the new window appeared, the truth became impossible to ignore. First name, or the time where you are, admin override in progress. The words glowed faintly on my monitor, pulsing with the kind of certainty only someone who felt untouchable would trigger. Mark wasn't just accessing the system. He was watching it. Watching me, the house felt different, then still familiar in shape, but suddenly foreign in intention. I closed the laptop softly, as if the machine could sense fear. I wasn't afraid of the technology. I was afraid of the person using it. I stood from my desk and walked to the kitchen, trying to breathe normally as I poured water into a glass. The fridge hummed. Floorboards creaked faintly upstairs. The air held a weight that didn't belong to a morning. I opened the smart home dashboard on my phone. The list of recognized users popped up instantly. Admin users E.Ross.M.Benson just 2. Always 2. But under recent activity, a new line appeared. Timestamped only seconds before the screen blackout. Admin alert sent. File access attempt detected. Someone marked had been notified instantly when I used the PASSPHR. My hands tightened around the phone. He didn't need to be home to control my house. He just needed access. Access I had never given him consciously. I scrolled deeper into the logs. A small submenu caught my eye. Link devices shared. M.Benson. Linked since some months ago, 14. That was long before they moved in temporarily. Long before Claire said they needed a quiet place to figure things out. Long before I started noticing the small fractures in their marriage. He had connected himself to my home before he lived in it. A chill slid down my spine. I tapped the entry. More details expanded. Access granted. Full control mode. Override permissions. Enabled. Full control. Override permissions. Of a house that wasn't his. My heartbeat didn't spike. It's slow, deliberate, heavy. Like my body was preparing for something I hadn't named yet. A message from Leo appeared at the top of my phone screen. Leo, Ethan, your system just pinged a remote admin. Did you trigger that? I typed back, no. A few seconds later, Leo, then someone is watching your activity. I stared at the phone. The comment wasn't a warning, it was confirmation. Someone wasn't just listening in this house. Someone was anticipating me. I walked to the living room, trying to keep my footsteps even. Claire sat on the couch with a blanket around her shoulders. Her eyes fixed on the TV, though. The screen was paused. "Did Mark text you?" I asked gently. She looked startled. "No. Why? You seem tense." She hesitated, then shook her head. "Just tired. Tired. Always tired." The word had become her shield. She didn't know what I knew yet. And she didn't know someone had given themselves keys to her childhood home long before she returned to it. I sat beside her. She didn't lean away, but she didn't lean in either. A middle space fear lives there. I didn't ask more. I didn't want to corner her. People fold when cornered. They open when they choose. Later, I checked the system again while Claire showered. The override attempt had stopped, but not because the file was closed. A new alert sat at the top of the log. Manual access, blocked by remote user, remote-user.mark, he had blocked me. And that wasn't the worst part. Just below it was a short, chilling message. Someone else is collecting audio. Not from me, not from my system. This was Leo's note. Automatically synced to the shared project folder we used for troubleshooting, I opened it. It was brief, written quickly, almost urgently. "Ethan, your speaker isn't the only device saving recordings. There's a shadow archive. Not yours. Not the system's. Someone duplicated files. Duplicated copied. Hidden, that meant every time I found something. Someone else stored it too quietly. Behind a wall I hadn't seen. Someone wasn't just planning something. They were documenting me. Paper moment. System notification, shared admin, M. Benson. Linked since 14 months ago permissions. Full control override, Enable D stared at the printed sheet for a long time. Paper is honest. Paper doesn't pretend. Paper doesn't hide behind digital shadows. I slipped it into my archive folder. Then, from upstairs I heard footsteps slow, measured descending the staircase. And a moment later, Mark appeared at the bottom, phone in hand, his eyes sharper than usual. He looked at me with a half smile. "You've been busy today. You shouldn't have known that, but he did." I used to think only people had shadows. But that morning, I learned my voice had a version of me stored somewhere I never gave permission. If you're watching this, tell me what device you're on or what time it is where you are. It started with a simple checksum error. A small glitch, Leo pointed out when scanning the smart speaker's backup. "One of your file hashes doesn't match," he said. "Something isn't adding up." Those were his exact words. Something isn't adding up. And he was right. After Mark's little performance on the staircase, the day before his smile, his tone, the quiet accusation hidden in, "You've been busy, I didn't sleep much," the house felt like a book someone else was writing. Turning pages I hadn't agreed to turn. Around 6 a.m. I opened my laptop and began hunting for inconsistencies. If Mark had a shadow archive, it had to be hidden somewhere the system wouldn't list openly. These devices stored data like a tree-visible branches on top, hidden roots below. Most users never dig far enough to find those roots. I did. Buried 3 layers deep. In a folder disguised as a temporary cache. I found it root/cache/system/shadow/audio_mirror_v3. I clicked it, expecting maybe 1 or 2 stray system files. Instead, the folder opened into a long list, dozens of audio logs. My time stomps, my commands, my background noises, my footsteps, my voice dot, all copied, none created by me. At first I thought my vision blurred, but it didn't. My mind just struggled to understand why someone needed a mirrored version of my home. My routines, my sounds. I clicked the first file. It wasn't even a recording from the house. It was someone stitching my voice together. Small samples of me saying yes, no, okay, I'll handle it. Sure, later, I'll think about it. I felt my chest tighten. Those weren't mistakes. Those were building blocks. Someone was constructing a version of me 1, who could agree to things I hadn't agreed to,
Not the ways things I didn't want.
respond in ways that served someone else. Mark, I clicked another file one with a different name. Future underscore conversation underscore e.ross.wav. My hand froze above the mouse. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. The file played in my headphones. Soft at first, my voice, but not my intention. I agreed to the transfer. My voice said, calm, direct, certain. A second voice mark replied, good, we'll finalize next week. Stop the playback immediately. My breathing felt too loud in the quiet room. The walls seemed to lean in. The conversation was seamless, no glitches, no awkward stitching. It sounded like me, fully formed, fully convinced it was a recording of something that hadn't happened yet. Someone was preparing a future where I said yes. Even if I never said it, the weight of that realization pressed into my spine. I didn't feel anger. I didn't even feel fear. I felt something cleaner, sharper truth cutting through a lie I hadn't seen forming. I took a screenshot of the folder path and printed it. Paper moment. Hidden folder path, route/cache/system/shadow/audio_mirror_v3. Files, 41 status. Unauthorized duplicates, includes synthetic future _conversation_WAF. I held the paper for a long time. The edges warm from the printer. Evidence matters. Not emotion evidence. Emotions unravel. Paper stays. Later that morning, Claire entered the room. She looked pale, her eyes overly bright, like she'd been crying quietly somewhere she didn't want anyone to hear. You're up early, she said softly. So are you, I responded. She hesitated. Her gaze drifted toward the staircase toward where Mark usually emerged around this time, stretching like a man waking from a peaceful dream. Dad, if something's wrong, you'll tell me, right? I looked at her, Ellie. Looked. The small tremor in her hands. The exhaustion in her posture. The hope and fear tangled together in her voice. Before I could answer, footsteps sounded upstairs. Heavy, measured, familiar. Claire stiffened. She stepped back, almost instinctively. Mark walked down the stairs wearing that calm. Practiced half-smiled, the expression of someone confident the script was still in his hands. Morning, he said, looking at me too long. Busy again? His words were smooth, but his eyes flicked toward my laptop for a split second. He knew. He knew I had found something. I closed my laptop gently, not breaking eye contact, just organizing old files, I said. He nodded slowly, like someone approving a lie they expected. Good, he said quietly. It's important to keep things in order. He walked past us. Claire swallowed hard, and I realized something chilling. Mark wasn't reacting to what I found. He was reacting to what I hadn't found yet. I didn't want to play the file again. Some part of me hoped it would vanish if I ignored it long enough. But truth doesn't disappear. It waits. And that morning, it waited for me behind a blinking cursor and a file name I still wish I'd never seen. If you're watching this, tell me what device you're using, or what time it is where you are. I sat alone in the study. The door slightly opened just enough to hear footsteps if someone approached. The house felt tightly wound, like a body holding its breath. The synthetic file, future_conversation_e.ross.wav, sat on my desktop like a loaded question. I clicked it, slipped on the headphones, and braced myself. The audio began with a faint rustle. Papers, maybe. Then the unmistakable tone of my own voice. I agreed to the transfer, the voice said. My voice.com. Certain. Even. Willing. But I hadn't said those words. Not once. Not in thought. Not in possibility. Someone had taken fragments of things I'd said over months, yes. No. I'll handle it later. Maybe and stitch them into a single, horrifying sentence. I paused the recording and let the silence press against me. What was I supposedly agreeing to? What transfer? Property accounts? Something else? I hit play again. Mark's voice followed, smooth and rehearsed. Good. We'll finalize next week. Finalize what? The file cut abruptly, as if someone had snipped the audio right before the revealing part. The hair on my neck lifted. This wasn't a hypothetical recording. This was a blueprint, a template for a moment he expected to create, one where my agreement existed on playback even if it didn't exist in reality. Slowly, I reopened the audio waveforms and analyzed the spectrogram just like Leo had taught me. Real speech has texture, inconsistency, breath. Synthetic speech leaves patterns, regular, mathematical. Too smooth, this file was 92 manufactured. My voice had been turned into a tool. A quiet anger took root inside me, not rage. It's not fire, but something colder. Something steady. Manipulation is loud when you notice it. But when you don't, it's silent. And silence is the sharpest weapon. A message pinged from Leo. Send me the file. I'll check if it was spliced from your archived clips. I forwarded it, hand steady, breath even. This wasn't panic. It was clarity. Clarity is painful, but it's clean. While waiting for Leo's analysis, I printed a page showing the digital signature mismatched the clearest evidence so far. Paper moment. Spectrogram analysis report probability of synthetic generation 92%. Voiced segments, non-organic transitions, detected. Conclusion. Audio constructed, using pre-existing fragments. Held the paper like a photograph of a betrayal. Not loud, not messy, just undeniable. A soft knock sounded at my door. Dad? Claire's voice. I slid the papers under a pile of books before opening the door. She stood there with wet hair and a towel around her shoulders. She looked young in that moment, young and tired in a way that broke something inside me. Are you busy? She whispered. No, I said. Come in. She stepped inside slowly, her fingers twisting the edge of the towel. I need to ask you something. Her voice wavered, but not from fear of what the answer might force her to face. What is it? I asked gently. Did you and Mark talk about any big decisions? Anything about next week? She swallowed. Anything financial? My heart tightened. She already suspected something. No, I said softly. Nothing. She exhaled relief mixed with dread. Okay? She nodded too many times, like she was trying to stabilize her thoughts. Because he said you two talked about something important. He said you agreed. Agreed. The word cut through the air. She continued, voice cracking. He said you were finally ready to move things forward. I wanted to ask what things meant, but her trembling told me she wasn't ready to tell me yet. We didn't talk, I said. Not about anything like that. Her lips parted softly. A small, devastated sound left her throat. She nodded, but I could see the truth shattering behind her eyes. Before either of us could speak again, a vibration buzzed in my pocket, Leo. I glanced at the message. Ethan. I finished the analysis. You need to see this. I opened the SE. Attachment inside was a breakdown of audio origins. My synthetic agreement had been built from dozens of tiny clip-casual phrases said months apart, but one line chilled me more than the rest. Primary source for, I agreed. Recorded 7 months ago. 7 months ago. Long before Mark and Claire moved in. Long before any of this. Started long before I even noticed the quiet shift in my home. Someone had been preparing this for a long time, too long. A floorboard creaked in the hallway, footsteps. Not Claire's, not mine. Someone else had come home. When the phone rang that morning, I thought it was a routine call, a reminder about a bill or an appointment I actually remembered making. I didn't expect a stranger's voice to tell me I was scheduled for a legal consultation I had never heard of. Country, or what time it is, where you are. The call came at 9:16 a.m. sharp. I was in the kitchen rinsing a mug when the screen lit up with an unknown number. I almost let it ring out lately. Unknown numbers felt like shadows knocking. but something told me to answer. "Hello, Mr. Ross," the woman said. "This is Dana from Whitford and Hayes Legal Group. We're confirming your appointment for next Monday at 10. I wiped my hands on a towel. "Appointment for what?" "Your estate consultation," she replied matter-of-factly. "Your son-in-law, Mark Benson, scheduled it on your behalf. We just need verbal confirmation. State consultation." The words fell into the room like something heavy and metallic. "I didn't schedule anything," I said slowly. There was a pause on her end. A quick shuffle of papers. "It says here you authorized it last week. How?" I asked. "By email." "By phone?" "Audio confirmation," she said. "From your personal profile." I gripped the counter. "Audio confirmation," my voice. The synthetic file wasn't a standalone trick, it was a tool. A key. A piece of a larger mechanism someone had been building around me. Piece by quiet piece. "I'd like to hear that audio," I said. "We don't typically—" "I'd like to hear it," I repeated, calm but unyielding. She hesitated. "I'll email you the snippet." When the call ended, I stood there for a long moment, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. Claire walked in, hair damp from a shower, eyes rimmed red like she'd cried again. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "Just handling something." She didn't press. She rarely did anymore. She'd become someone who spoke only when spoken to, breathed only when it felt safe, existed in small, soft steps. Before I could ask her anything else, my phone buzzed the email. Subject line, "Audio confirmation, 37 seconds. I opened it. My voice filled the room. "I agreed to the consultation," my voice said. "Please schedule it." It's the same synthetic tone, the same seamless stitching. A calm, obedient version of me. I replayed it twice. Claire froze mid-step, her eyes lifting slowly. She knew my voice, my real voice. She knew what didn't sound right. "Dad." "When did you say that?" She whispered. "I didn't," I said. A small, trembling breath left her. Then she whispered something I'd never heard from her before. "He told me you did." Her voice broke on the last word. "Claire," I said softly, "did he pressure you?" She didn't answer. And silence. Silence is an answer. I wanted to hug her, protect her, tell her she wasn't alone, but a door creaked upstairs. Heavy footsteps. Mark. The moment evaporated. She stepped away from me like someone retreating from an open flame. I let her go. Forcing comfort is another kind of pressure. I clicked the attachment again. The audio file had metadata. Attached something most people wouldn't notice. Created 7 months ago, modified 3 days ago, uploaded by Benson. He hadn't just forged the file, he'd been saving it, preparing it, waiting for the right moment to use it. I printed the appointment confirmation from the law office's email. Paper moment. Appointment confirmation, client Ethan Ross, scheduled by Mark Benson. Purpose: estate consultation verification. Audio clip attached. I placed the paper slowly into my archive folder. Pages were beginning to stack, thin sheets of truth that together formed a weight I couldn't ignore. Around noon, sat alone on the back porch, staring at the trees swaying gently in the wind. The world outside looked so normal. Birds chirping, cars passing, sunlight breaking through the clouds. I wondered how many people lived through quiet disasters while the world kept moving like nothing was wrong. A vibration buzzed on my phone. A message from Leo. "Ethan, that audio wasn't made last week. Segments came from 7 months ago. Someone's been preparing this for a long time." My hands tightened around the phone. Someone wasn't improvising a scheme. They were executing a timeline. As I took to go inside, I noticed something odd. My front door was slightly ajar. Not wide, not dramatic. Just enough to be wrong. And at the edge of the doorway, something faint glinted in the afternoon light. A footprint. Not mine. Not Claire's. Not from any shoe. I recognized someone had been inside the house again. And this time they didn't bother to hide. I wasn't supposed to hear my daughter crying. Not at 2:17 a.m. Not in that quiet, broken way that only happens when someone has run out of places to hide. When I think back on it now, that was the moment my house finally told me the truth. Age or what time it is where you are. The day had been long too long, and by the time midnight arrived, the house felt like a closed book. Claire had gone to bed early. Mark had taken one of his evening calls outside. I knew better now than to think they were work calls. Patterns tell stories when words don't. I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying the forged audio, the lawyer appointment, the synthetic voice stitched together like a digital puppet. Around 2 a.m, I got up for water. The hallway was dim, just a sliver of moonlight stretching across the wooden floor. That's when I heard it. A soft sob, not loud, not sharp, just tired. A sound pulled from a place someone tried to bury. It came from Claire's room. I moved quietly, stopping just short of her door. I heard her voice, low, cracking, whispering words she didn't want anyone to hear. Please, please stop. I can't do this. My chest tightened. Then another voice, Mark's, muffled but sharper. Keep your voice down. You're overreacting. Overreacting. That word again. The favorite vocabulary of someone who builds control out of quiet pressure? I never agreed to this, Claire said. You said Dad already understood? You said he agreed. Silence after that was cold. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I needed to hear. Mark's voice lowered, a tone that belonged behind closed doors. He will agree. He's predictable. He trusts too easily. And you need to stop questioning everything. Her voice trembled. He's my father, Mark. And he'll be fine. Mark snapped softly. We're doing this for us. For our future. You knew that. I didn't know it would be like this. You're tired, he said. Just like always. Get some sleep. The bed creaked. Footsteps crossed the floor. A door opened. Closed. Silence. Then the sound of a pillow. Muffling another sob, one she didn't want him to hear. My daughter was falling apart 3 doors away from me, and I had been letting it happen in the name of peace. I waited 10 minutes, letting the house settle, letting Claire cry without the shame of being found. When the quiet finally softened, I walked back to my room and opened my laptop. I played the earlier recordings again, Mark whispering my name. Claire's faint voice in the background. The synthetic agreement. The pieces together hurt more than hearing them. Separately, the house wasn't malfunctioning. The house was. Documenting a quiet collapse. I opened a new note in my archive folder. I titled it Claire Midnight. Not word for word, emotion doesn't fit neatly into transcripts, but enough that the truth wouldn't fade. Paper moment, transcript notes, 2:17 a.m. Claire, please stop. I can't do this. Mark, you're overreacting. Claire. Dad never agreed. You said he did, Mark. He will. Stop questioning everything. Save the file. Then I backed it up to the USB drive. Then I printed a copy. It's just to hold something real in my hands. Paper doesn't gaslight you. Paper doesn't twist your memory. Around 3 a.m., I stepped quietly back into the hallway. Claire's door was cracked open just an inch. Enough to see her curled on her side, arms wrapped around herself, shoulders trembling even in sleep. Her fear wasn't loud. It was lived in. A kind of fear people learn to hold silently. I closed the door gently, letting her stay in the only peace she had left. As I turned, I noticed a soft glow under the living room doorway, the smart speaker's faint blue pulse. Repeating slowly. Not active, not listening, just awake. I approached it cautiously and saw a new notification flashing on my phone. New recording saved 2 hours, 17 minutes, and 48 seconds. And the house had captured her. Breakdown, captured his tone, captured everything. My breath steadied. The way it does right before a storm becomes inevitable. Someone else in the house knew that. File existed. Someone who didn't want me to hear it, but I would. And when I did, nothing in this house would stay the same. Most people assume betrayal comes with shouting, slammed doors, or clear lines drawn in daylight. But sometimes betrayal shows itself in a softer whin, a whisper you weren't meant to hear, spoken by someone who shouldn't be there at all. If you're watching this, tell me what the weather's like where you are or what time you're listening. The morning after hearing. Claire break at 2:17 a.m. I couldn't shake the sound of that second voice. It wasn't Mark's. It wasn't mine. It wasn't anyone who lived in the house. It had been too soft, too close to the wall, as if spoken through a crack or from just beyond the frame of her room. And the more I replayed it in my mind, the more certain I became it wasn't imagined. I sat at the kitchen table long after sunrise, waiting for the house to wake up. Claire stayed in her room longer than usual. Mark went out early, far too early for someone who claimed he'd had a late-night work call. He left without saying a word. But the silence he left behind carried intention. When the door shut, the house exhaled. A few minutes later, there was a knock, soft, hesitant. I opened the door to find Mason standing there, my neighbor from 2 houses down. He looked tired, a little pale, holding a small paper bag like a peace offering. "Morning, Ethan," he said. "Sorry to stop by early. Everything okay?" I asked. He shifted awkwardly. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something I heard last night." My skin prickled. He glanced behind me, checking if anyone else was nearby, then lowered his voice. I was up late. Couldn't sleep. And my window was cracked open for air. I heard voices. "From your yard." I stepped aside to let him in. He closed the door quietly. "What did you hear?" I asked. He looked down at the paper bag, as if debating how much to reveal. "A woman crying." I think it was Claire. His voice softened. "And a man?" "Not Mark." A chill moved across the back of my neck. "What did he say?" I whispered. He swallowed. He said, "You shouldn't have to do this alone. It'll get worse if you stay quiet." My breath caught. It wasn't Mark. It wasn't me. Someone else was comforting her, someone who had heard more than he should have. "Mason," I said carefully. "Did you talk to Claire?" He shook his head quickly. "No. She doesn't know I heard anything." He hesitated, but "I have something you need to see." He reached into the paper bag and pulled out a small USB stick. "I didn't mean to record anything," he said quickly. "My security camera faces my backyard. The mic is sensitive. It picked up some of your side yard during the night. I didn't listen too much. I just knew it wasn't right." My chest tightened. "What's on it?" He met my eyes. "Some of what I heard, enough to know she isn't safe." I plugged the USB into my laptop. The video was dark, grainy night footage, but the audio was clear. Too clear. Claire's voice shaky. A man's voice gentle, calm, trying to steady her. Not romantic. Not inappropriate. Comforting. "You can't keep letting him speak for your father," the man whispered. "You know, this isn't normal." "I know," Claire sobbed. "I just don't know how to stop him." "Stop him." The words carried weight, and then clear as daylight, the man added, "Friday." That's what he said. "Everything changes on Friday." My stomach dropped. "Friday?" Mark's voice echoed in my memory. His whispered certainty in the earlier. "RECORDINGSI." Paused the video and looked at Mason. "You didn't see who the man was?" He shook his head. "No, but I recognized the voice." I frowned. "Recognized?" He hesitated again. "It sounded like someone who's been checking on her for weeks. When she stands outside late at night," it clicked. The neighbor wasn't confessing guilt. He was confessing concern. Claire had been leaning on him quietly, secretly, afraid of what Mark would say, do, or twist. Paper moment. Mason's video clip. Timestamp. 11:58 p.m. Audio. Claire crying, softly, male voice. "You shouldn't have to do this alone. Everything changes Friday." I saved the file immediately and printed the transcript. My hands steady, even though the truth felt heavy. When Mason left, the house fell quiet again. Too quiet. I walked to the window and noticed something strange. The side gate was open, wide left intentionally. A small detail. But no detail is small when someone is planning something. Friday. Everything changes. Friday, I didn't know what Mark was planning, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever was coming next, he didn't expect me to be ready. Friday began with a silence that didn't feel like morning quiet. It felt like a countdown. I woke up before sunrise, not because of an alarm, but because the air in the house felt staged, like the moment right before a curtain lifts. From, or what time it is where you are, I moved through the hallway slowly, listening for the little noises a house makes when people are still asleep, breathing through cracked doors, sheets shifting, the subtle groan of floorboards. But everything felt arranged, like someone had pressed pause on the world and expected me not to notice. At 7:14 a.m., the bedroom door across the hall opened. Mark stepped out, fully dressed, hair styled, shoes on. Not a man waking up, a man beginning a performance. He flashed the brightest smile I had seen from him in months. "Morning, Ethan," he said, as if we were old friends sharing a secret. "Morning," I replied. "You sleep well?" His tone was syrupy, smooth. "Well enough," I said. He nodded, satisfied with that answer, the way a chess player is satisfied when their opponent moves exactly where expected. He walked into the kitchen, humming a tune I didn't recognize. Something upbeat, cheerful, synthetic. I followed a minute later. The kitchen table looked staged, 2-3 placemats perfectly aligned. Claire's cup already set out, confetti are percolating as if breakfast had been prepared by an invisible hand, as if someone wanted the house to look peaceful. On the day something irreversible was planned, Claire appeared next, moving carefully, as though she didn't want to disturb the atmosphere. Her eyes flicked toward Majesta second, tiny, fragile, and in that second I saw everything she was holding back: fear, exhaustion, a quiet apology. She didn't know how to speak aloud. "Morning," she whispered. "Morning," I said gently. Mark clapped his hands lightly. "Big day today?" The words hit the air like a dropped coin, small, metallic, impossible to ignore. Claire stiffened before she forced a smile. "Right, big day." Her voice didn't match her expression. "Anything special happening?" I asked. Mark grinned. "Just moving things forward. You'll see." He sat down, took a sip of coffee, and exhaled with theatrical satisfaction. I wanted to ask him what he meant, but I wasn't playing his script. Not today. Instead, I excused myself and stepped outside with my phone. The cold morning air helped. It steadied my breathing, sharpened my focus. I texted Leo. "Ethan, tonight, 7:30 p.m., I'll send you the clip." He responded in seconds. "Leo, ready, I'll monitor the channels." I leaned against the porch railing. Somewhere inside, Claire set a plate down too softly. Somewhere inside, Mark hummed again. And somewhere inside, my smart speaker blinked one pulse. Then another. I re-entered the house carefully. Mark was leaning against the counter now, scrolling through his phone. When he looked up, his smile was gone. His eyes were sharp, calculating. "You'll have something to sign later," he said casually, as if asking for sugar. "Just a formality? A formality?" I repeated, keeping my voice neutral. "Yes, it'll be easy. We talked about it, remember?" He said it lightly. But the words were heavy. Manipulation wears a soft voice. Claire's fork slipped slightly from her fingers. She didn't look up. Mark's eyes landed on her for a fraction of a second, the kind of look that isn't a threat, but a reminder. Then he turned back to me. "Anyway, we're all set. By tonight, it's all his idea." Idea. The same phrase he used on the recordings. I opened the smart home log on my phone under the table. A new entry was waiting, time-stamped only minutes earlier. Voice command detected, user unverified. He'll say yes today. Not spoken by me, not by Claire. By him, he was prepping the house again. I took a quiet breath and sent a reply to Leo. "Recording at 7:30. Be ready. Paper moment. Text message screenshot, Ethan. Be ready 7:30 p.m. I'll send you the clip. Leo, monitoring. Stay calm." I locked my phone and looked up. Mark was staring at me now, smiling, not pretending. A slow, assessing gaze. The kind of look a man gives another man when he thinks he knows exactly what will happen next. He didn't. Claire finally spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "Dad, can we talk later?" I nodded. Of course. Mark stepped away from the counter and grabbed his keys. "I'll be back in a few hours," he said. "Don't go anywhere important." Then he left. The door shut. Claire sat there, shaking just slightly, her fingers gripping the edge of the table. "Dad," she whispered, voice breaking, "I'm scared." I reached for her hand. "I know." Outside, a car engine started. Mark's. Inside, the speaker blinked again once. Twice. It recorded something the moment he left. A whisper. "By tonight, it's all his idea." This time, he wasn't talking to Claire. He was talking to someone else. Someone waiting for the outcome. Mark waited until evening, like he wanted the day to marinate in tension before serving the final blow. By then, the house felt like a stage set with perfect lighting, perfect silence, perfect opportunity. And when he finally placed the contract in front of me, he smiled like a man who believed he'd already won. "If you're watching this, tell me what time it is where you are." It was 6:42 p.m. The sun had dipped behind the trees, the kitchen lights, casting a soft, warm glow that made everything look deceptively calm. Claire lingered near the sink, nerves so visible they felt like a second presence in the room. She kept touching her sleeve, then her necklace, then her sleeve again, her hand, searching for something to stabilize. Mark walked in, holding a thin folder. The way he carried it told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't offering me a document. He was delivering a final act. "Ethan," he said, placing the folder on the table. "Let's talk." His tone was calm. Too calm. A salesman's calm. I sat down without a word. He slid the folder toward me like a dealer pushing cards across a table. "It's just a small agreement, something we discussed before." "We didn't discuss anything," I said. He smiled. Not with his mouth, his eyes. The kind of smile that says he already has your answer. "Well," he said lightly, "sometimes people forget conversations. That's why paper helps." Paper. The irony wasn't lost on me. I opened the folder. Inside was a document titled Transitional Joint Investment Agreement. The language was designed to look simple bullet points, short sentences, small commitments. But the real weight sat in Section 7, Transitional Ownership Rights. The wording was smooth, vague enough to seem harmless, precise enough to transfer control of 2 of my assets, my home and my savings account, if I agreed. Me. Not a synthetic version of me. Not a forged recording me. I scanned the clauses slowly. Claire watched from across the room, her eyes widening with every page I turned. She knew something wasn't right, but she had never seen the evidence the way I had. "This isn't a small agreement," I said. Mark leaned back in his chair, hands folded. "It's for all of us, Ethan, for our future. It just formalizes what you already said." I didn't say anything. He chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Let's not make this difficult." His confidence was unsettling, not loud, not aggressive, just assured. Like the outcome had already been decided, like a man who wasn't presenting a choice, but a confirmation. I took out my phone under the table and snapped photos of the contract page by page. I sent them quietly to Leo. 2 minutes later, Leo texted, "Leo, Clause 7 transfers ownership. This is coercive. Do not sign." I placed the contract flat on the table and looked up. "Mark," I said calmly, "what exactly am I agreeing to?" He clasped his hands and leaned forward with rehearsed sincerity. "Security for us. Stability. You're getting older, Ethan. It's responsible planning." I felt Claire flinch behind me. "Responsible for who?" I asked. He tilted his head slightly, almost pitying. "Why are you acting like this is new?" "Like you didn't already tell me you were ready?" Claire's voice cracked from across the room. "He never said that." Mark didn't even look at her. "Claire, stay out of this." "No," she whispered, trembling. "This isn't right." He stared at her with that cold, controlled expression I'd only glimpsed before. A flicker of the real man behind the performance. Then he turned back to me. "Look, we need to finish this," he said. "You sign now, and the lawyer finalizes it Monday. And if I don't sign? He didn't answer with words. He smiled smaller, this time sharper, a smile that didn't reach any part of his face except the place where his ego lived. I stood slowly, keeping the contract between us. I need a moment, I said, to think. He mocked, rising with me. There's nothing to think about. I didn't respond. I walked into the hallway, pretending I needed water. But I stopped just outside the kitchen, out of sight, listening. Mark's voice dropped to a whisper. Not meant for me. By tonight it's all his idea, he murmured. I've rehearsed it enough. Rehearsed, recorded, prepared. This wasn't a negotiation. This was a trap. Paper moment. Photograph. Section. Clause 7. Transitional ownership rights. My phone buzzed again. Leo, Ethan, stop everything. There's more in the metadata. Call me when you can. I pocketed the phone and stepped back into the kitchen. Mark, I said quietly, step outside with me. Alone. His eyes narrowed. But he agreed. And that was the moment I knew he didn't realize the script had just changed. I didn't raise my voice when we stepped outside. I didn't need to. Some truths don't require volume. They only need silence thick enough to hold them. And that night, the silence in my backyard felt like an entire stage waiting for the final scene. First name, or what time it is where you are. The air was cool, sharp with the scent of damp grass. Motion sensor lights flickered on, bathing the patio in a pale glow. Mark walked ahead of me, confident, relaxed, even humming under his breath. He had no idea he was walking into his own confession. He turned and faced me with the posture of someone presenting reason. Ethan, let's keep this simple. I nodded slowly. Simple is good. Smiled like he believed that. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The night carried the weight for us, the distant rustle of trees, the faint hum of a neighbor's porch light, the soft buzz of electricity in the fences. It all felt still, waiting. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Mark's smile thinned. What's that? Conversation? I said. Yours. I tapped the screen. The audio file played through a small external speaker I had slipped into my jacket, a deliberate choice. I didn't want him to claim glitch, distortion, misinterpretation. Wanted him to hear himself clearly. His voice filled the backyard. He'll accept it eventually. He won't fight. Mark's jaw tightened. Not fear, but annoyance. Like someone inconvenienced by replayed instructions, I let the recording continue. You can't protect him forever. Then Claire's muffled sob. Please stop talking about him like that. Then him again. He'll say yes. By Friday. It's all his idea. I stopped the playback. Mark exhaled sharply, rolling his shoulders. Ethan, you took that out of context? Context? I repeated calmly. It was a private conversation, he said. Claire was emotional. I was comforting her. Comforting her? I asked. By telling her I'd agree to something I knew nothing about? His eyes narrowed. You're twisting this. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Truth was doing the talking. Instead, I played the second file, the synthetic conversation of my voice saying, I agreed to the transfer. The artificial tone echoed across the yard. Mark's expression didn't break. Not fear, not guilt, just irritation. You're being dramatic, he said. It's a tool, a backup. You're overthinking. Synthetic tool, I said, designed to mimic my voice. Why would you need that? He took a slow step closer. Because you're stubborn, Ethan. You drag your feet. I was trying to help move things along. Move what along? Our future, he said, gesturing vaguely. You, Claire, me. Stability. You act like I'm the villain here. I looked at him. Calm. Steady. You forged my voice, I said. You created an audio approval with words I never said. You made an appointment with a lawyer. You drafted a contract to transfer ownership. You rehearsed conversations where I agreed to things I didn't even know existed. His face hardened, lines sharpening across his jaw. You think you're the only one who knows how to plan? He said quietly. There it was, the real voice. The one hidden beneath charm and politeness and control. He stepped closer again, lowering his tone. Ethan, stop making this harder. You signed the agreement, we finalize things on Monday, and everything gets easier. For who? I asked. For all of us, he snapped. Behind him, the porch light flickered. A cool breeze drifted across the yard, rustling the leaves above us. It felt like the house itself was listening. I pulled out one final piece printed earlier, tucked inside my jacket. The spectrogram report. Paper moment. Printed audio analysis. Probability of synthetic generation, 92%. Primary segments sourced 7 months prior. Constructed without user consent. Mark looked at the paper and finally something cracked. Not fear, but irritation sharpened into anger. "You think this means anything?" he said. "You think a piece of paper changes what's happening? You're late, Ethan? Everything is already in motion." "And yet," I said quietly, "you're the one trying to convince me." For the first time that night, he faltered. Just a moment, a heartbeat, a glitch in his confidence. Then he leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper meant only for me. "You think you've caught up?" "You haven't." He stepped back. "So let me ask you," he said softly, almost calmly. Something cold slid through me. He wasn't referencing what I'd found. He was referencing what I hadn't. Before I could reply, my phone buzzed. A message from Leo. "Ethan, there is another file, hidden deeper. You need to open it now." My breath steadied. Mark saw the notification, and he smiled, not with pride, with certainty. When Leo texted me that there was another file, one even deeper than the synthetic conversation, I knew instantly that Mark's confidence wasn't arrogance. It was certainty. Certainty that I hadn't reached the real evidence yet. If you're watching this, tell me what device you're on, or what time you're listening. After Mark disappeared back into the house, I stayed outside for a moment, letting the cool night air settle the shaking I didn't want to show. The trees were still. The motion lights hummed faintly. Everything felt staged quiet, controlled, choreographed. I opened my phone and saw Leo's message expanded. Deep layer. Hidden in root, greater than temp, greater than syslog, greater than archive_v2. Do not play it with speaker output. Use headphones. That warning alone made my pulse slow. I stepped inside. The living room lights felt too warm, too deliberate. Claire stood near the hallway, startled to see me come in alone. "Everything okay?" she whispered. For the moment, I said. She swallowed hard. Her eyes flicking toward the kitchen where Mark's shadow moved in and out of the doorway, like a presence pretending not to listen. "I'll be upstairs for a bit," I told her. She nodded quickly, relief mixed with fear. In my room, I locked the door, pulled the curtains closed, and opened the laptop. My fingers moved automatically, now not frantic, not shaky, controlled. Like a surgeon preparing for a cut he knows will hurt. I followed Leo's path. Root gives. Temp gives syslog gives archive_v2 hidden inside was a single audio file. Session _backup_Claire_room_108. WAV, the timestamp hit me first, recorded 2:03. A.M. Same night as the whisper, same night as the side entrance. Same night. Claire broke. I plugged in my headphones and pressed play. A soft sound filled my ears, breathing. Not the heavy kind, just fragile, uneven breaths, the kind someone makes when trying not to cry. Then Claire's voice, small, trembling. "I can't keep doing this," she whispered. My chest tightened. Then a second voice, a male voice, not Mark, not me. A quiet, steady tone. "You shouldn't have to," the man said. "You know he's pushing you too far." The realization felt like cold water running through my veins. This was the same voice. Hassan had mentioned the one comforting Claire through the wall. But this recording wasn't from outside. It was inside her room. "Inside my house," Claire sobbed softly. "He said Dad already agreed. But Dad doesn't even know. He keeps making me say things I don't mean." The man exhaled slowly, compassion in the sound. "He's manipulating both of you," he said gently. "He's been planning this for months. Maybe longer." Claire's voice cracked again. "I feel like I'm disappearing. I feel like I don't exist." "You do exist," the voice said. "You're scared, and he knows that." Fabric rustled, someone getting closer to comfort her. Then Claire whispered something that broke me in a way I didn't expect. "I don't know who I am with him anymore." I paused the recording. My eyes stayed closed for several seconds. This wasn't just control. This was erosion. Slow, quiet erosion of someone's identity. I hit play again. Claire, what do I do? The man hesitated. Then Friday, he whispered. He said everything changes Friday. You need to be ready. Claire inhaled shakily. Ready for what? His reply was almost inaudible. For him to make your father agree, even if he doesn't. Something inside me went cold. Then the moment that froze my breath, Claire, barely audible. What if he hurts Dad? The man whispered. He won't, because he knows I'm here. I sat up straight. The voice wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a suitor. It wasn't an intruder. It was someone who cared about Claire more than Mark ever had. Someone who had been watching over her quietly. Someone Mark didn't know about. Someone who had become a witness to everything. I played the last 5 seconds. Footsteps. Fast. Heavy. Then Claire gasped. Go. He's coming. The recording cut sharply. Not natural. Manually ended. A forced stop. Paper moment. Transcript excerpt. Claire. What if he hurts Dad? Male voice. He won't. Because he knows I'm here. Claire. Go. He's coming. Printed it and placed it in the folder. My hands didn't shake this time. They were steady. Cold steady. The truth wasn't that Mark was just manipulating Claire. The truth was that Claire had been trying to protect both of us, and someone else had stepped in to keep her from collapsing. I sat back, breathing slowly, letting the confirmation settle. Someone else inside my home saw everything Mark was doing. Someone else was my unexpected ally. Someone Mark didn't know existed. A floorboard creaked not in the hallway, behind my bedroom door. A shadow paused there. Someone was standing outside, listening, and they hadn't moved since the recording started. I'd heard Claire cry, whisper, break, and apologize for things that were never her fault. But I had never heard her speak with her own voice, not the one shaped by fear or pressure. Not until that morning when the house finally went quiet long enough for her truth to surface. If you're watching this, tell me what time it is where you are, what city you're in. I found her on the porch just after sunrise. She sat curled in one of the old wooden chairs, knees pulled to her chest, hair tied in a loose knot. The early light cast a pale gold over her face, revealing exhaustion and the delicate lines beneath her eyes. She wasn't crying. That was almost worse. She looked emptied out, like someone grief had scooped clean. When she noticed me, she tried to straighten up, as if she needed to appear fine before I got too close. You're up early, I said softly. She nodded. Couldn't sleep. I sat in the chair beside her. We didn't speak for a while. The porch was quiet except for the occasional bird and the soft creak of the wood settling beneath us. A calm space, finally. A space Mark wasn't filling with his voice. Claire took a slow breath, clasping her hands. Her fingers trembled slightly. I need to tell you something, Dad, she said quietly. I'm listening. Another breath, deeper this time. The kind someone takes before peeling away a layer of fear. It started months ago, she whispered, before we moved in. Before all of this. She swallowed hard. Mark changed, she continued. Little things at first. Nothing dramatic. He corrected me more, interrupted me more, decided things for me. Told me how I felt before I had time to feel it. Her voice cracked just a small fracture. That's how it always starts, I said softly. She nodded, her eyes glistening. I didn't even notice it happening. It was so quiet. He made it sound like support, like he was helping me make decisions. I stayed silent. People need space to unload truth that's been trapped too long. Then he started talking about you, she said, about how you were getting older, how you needed help, how he could step in. He said I worried too much about you, that he could handle things. My stomach tightened. He kept telling me you had agreed to something, some plan, some financial decision. She shook her head. He said it enough that I started believing it. That's the part that scares me the most. She looked up at me, eyes filled with guilt she didn't deserve. I started doubting my own memory. I reached out and placed my hand on hers gently, without forcing comfort. You didn't do anything wrong, I said. He isolated you. That's how control works. She pressed her lips together, her breath shaky. There's more. She whispered, I waited. He started monitoring when you and I talked alone. He'd walk in on conversations. He'd ask what we discussed. He'd reinterpret your words before I had a chance to think about them. He'd say things like, "Your dad trusts me," or he asked me to handle it. He wanted to replace communication with interpretation. I said. She nodded. Exactly. The morning breeze lifted a strand of hair from her face. She looked impossibly young in that moment, and impossibly strong at the same time. "I don't want to live like this," she whispered. "I don't want to be someone who's constantly afraid of making the wrong expression." "You won't," I said. She finally let out a breath that sounded like release brief. It's trembling, fragile. "I should have told you earlier," she whispered. I didn't want to make things worse. You always said things would get worse if I interfered." Interfered. That word had Mark's fingerprints all over it. Claire closed her eyes. For the first time, she looked unburdened by the need to explain herself. "I'm so sorry, Dad," she said. "You deserved better." "I should have known," I interrupted gently. "You didn't fail. You survived." Her shoulders shook, but she didn't cry. She just breathed. Her voice, when she finally spoke again, carried a softness I hadn't heard in months. "I want out," she whispered. "This ends tonight." I nodded slowly. "Tonight." Paper moment. Claire's notes found folded in her pocket. She handed them to Ethan during the conversation. "Things I need to say. He makes decisions for me. He rewrites conversations. He tells me Dad agreed. I'm scared. I want out." When she handed me the paper, her hand didn't shake for the first time. Inside the house, door slammed. Claire flinched. We both looked toward the hallway, through the porch window. Mark was home early, far too early, and he wasn't supposed to hear what came next. I didn't expect the last recording to come from the backyard. I didn't expect it to arrive automatically, without my voice command, without any deliberate action from me. But technology has a strange instinct. It sometimes captures truth exactly when someone tries hardest to hide it. If you're watching this, tell me what time it is where you are. It was late, almost midnight, when the file appeared. New audio saved, backyard_23_59_last WAV. The title alone felt like a warning. Last, as if the house itself knew the story was reaching its breaking point. Claire had retreated to her room after our conversation. Her breathing was steadier, her posture stronger. Sometimes the act of naming fear is enough to shrink it back to its true size. For the first time in months, she looked like herself, like the young woman she was before quiet manipulation carved her into someone smaller. I was in the living room, pacing slowly, waiting for 7:30 and for Leo to text me that he was ready. But when the notification appeared, my body reacted before my mind did. I sat down, plugged in my headphones, and pressed play. The recording began. With the soft rustle of someone stepping onto the back patio, leaves shifted, gravel crunched underfoot, then came Mark's voice, sharp, annoyed, talking to someone. "Are you kidding me? She ruined it tonight," he hissed. "I had him right there." My jaw tightened. The house captured his frustration raw, unedited. "She was supposed to keep him calm," he continued. "Just nod, smile, let him think it was his decision." There it was. His script, his strategy, his quiet erosion of reality. He kept pacing. "All he had to do was sign," he muttered. "Once that transfer was done, everything else would follow. Simple, clean." A brief pause. Then he lowered his voice, still sharp, still venomous. But now, no. She had to break again. Break. He said it like her emotions were inconveniences. Like her heart was a faulty appliance. "She thinks I don't know she's talking to someone," Mark added, voice tightening. "But I do, and whoever it is, they're making things messy." Messy, meaning someone broke the script he'd written for us. He took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. But anger lives loudly in the quiet. It leaks through every breath. And then came the part that made my stomach drop. "You tell your guy that if he doesn't back off, I'll deal with him myself," said your guy. So he wasn't talking to himself. He was talking to someone. Someone he trusted enough to confess to. Someone who expected updates. Someone involved. My pulse slowed, not in fear, but in clarity, This wasn't just manipulation. This was coordination. And he didn't stop there. He doesn't even know about the synthetic chain. Mark kept going. All the approvals already lined up. One more push, and his name goes exactly where I want it. Synthetic chain. A whole network of artificial approvals. Not just one file, not just one voice. Clipped an entire system designed to mimic me. Then came the quiet part, the one that shifted something in my chest. He's too soft, Mark whispered. He trusts easily. He loves to easily. That's why people like him are simple to move. I felt something cold settle in my spine, simple to move. A chess piece, a predictable obstacle. Mark exhaled a long, irritated exhale as if burdened by the weight of manipulating two people at once. Honestly, he added, the only reason this hasn't worked faster is because she keeps breaking down. She slows everything. She makes everything emotional. Emotion to him was inefficiency. Footsteps shifted. He turned toward the fence. We finish this Monday, he said. He signs. She stabilizes. And we move forward. He ended with a line spoken so softly that the microphone almost missed it. And after that, I don't care what happens. I paused the recording, not because it hurt, because it confirmed everything I already knew. The path, the timeline, the removal of obstacles, the dismissal of consequences. I pressed play again. At the end of the clip, faint but undeniable, came the distant sound of police sirens so far away. They weren't a threat yet, but close enough to be an omen. Paper moment. Final audio log. Backyard_23_59_last. WAV double quotes contains : Mark admitting manipulation confirmation of synthetic approval chain timeline for forced financial transfer threat toward unknown guy helping Claire Finn align. After that, I don't care what happens. I saved the file twice. Once to the system. Once to the external drive. Then I tucked the printed transcript into my archive folder as I did. My phone buzzed. A message popped up from a restricted number. Bring everything to me now. No name. No context, just urgency. I looked toward the hallway. The light outside Claire's room flickered gently. She wasn't the only one who'd heard something tonight. And Mark wasn't the only one waiting. I always thought the end of something painful would feel loud, shouting, confrontation, doors slammed shut. But the morning my house finally returned to me, it arrived in silence. A clean, unfamiliar silence. If you're watching this, tell me what time it is where you are. Or what you're doing while listening. I woke up before dawn. The last fragments of the backyard recording echoing softly in my memory. Mark's voice sharp with arrogance. His timeline. Certainty. His threat toward the unnamed person helping Claire. The final whisper he didn't know was captured. And after that, I don't care what happens. The line had stayed with me through the night, not because of the words, but because of the tone behind them. A tone belonging to someone who believed no one could touch him. Someone who'd built a world where consequences didn't apply. But consequences always come, usually quietly. Usually in daylight at 6:12 a.m., the doorbell rang. Not a sharp ring. Not aggressive, just official. I walked downstairs slowly. Claire stood at the base of the stairs, pale and trembling, still wrapped in yesterday's tiredness. Her eyes searched mine, asking questions she was too afraid to voice. It's okay, I whispered. When I opened the door, 2 officers stood there, calm, composed, respectful. A woman in a navy coat held a folder in her hand. The older officer nodded politely. Mr. Ross, he asked. Yes. We received a transfer of audio evidence and documentation early this morning, he said. We need to speak with you and your daughter. Claire inhaled sharply behind me. Leo, he had sent everything. All of it. The synthetic chain, the lawyer appointment. Meditated, the midnight confession, the backyard recording. He did exactly what I knew. He protected the story before anyone could rewrite it. Come in, I said quietly. They stepped inside. Claire clung to the banister like it anchored her. One of the officers gave her a gentle smile, the kind that says, you're safe. "We need to ask a few questions about Mark Benson," the woman said. Claire's breath hitched at the name. "He's not here," she whispered. "We know," the officer said. "He drove out of state last night, but before he left, he contacted a legal office using a forged voice authorization. That office flagged the inconsistencies. So the synthetic chain had already started collapsing from the outside. Small lies don't destroy big plans, but big plans collapse under small truths." The officer opened his folder, and "We received this," he said, handing me the printed transcript I had made. Not the copy I held, a scanned version. Leo had sent it. Paper. Moment. Evidence packet. Transcript. Backyard _23_59_last. WAVMETADATA. An analysis. Enthalysis. Synthetic chain reconstruction, liar, appointment, forgery, report, Claire's handwritten notes. I want out. Seeing Claire's handwriting in an evidence file was surreal. A reminder of how close she came to disappearing inside someone else's story. "We'll need official statements," the officer said. "But based on what we have, you and your daughter are safe." Safe. A simple word. Strange how heavy it felt. Claire stepped closer. "What happens now?" "Now," the woman said gently, "you both get to breathe. He doesn't get to speak for either of you ever again." Claire broke then, not into sobs, but into a soft exhale that sounded like the first real breath she had taken in months. I placed my hand on her shoulder, steadying her the way she had tried to steady herself for too long. The officers stayed a little longer, gathering basic details, explaining next steps. Their voices were calm, structured, the opposite of the quiet chaos we'd been living in. After they left, the house felt different. Not lighter, not brighter. Just honest. A house without rehearsed whispers, without synthetic agreements, without someone else's timeline dictating every corner of the day. Claire sat at the kitchen table, looking out the window. Sunlight filtered over her face, catching the early warmth of the morning. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded slowly. "I think so. I think I can be." We sat together for a long stretch of time, not talking, not thinking, just existing in a room that finally belonged to us again. At 8:04 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message from Leo. "It's over. Can't change anything now. Call me later." Beneath it, he'd attached one final audio clip. I tapped it open. My own voice spoke. "You're not alone." 7 months of recordings. Turned against us, but one small sentence, captured by accident, became the truth Mark never planned for. I didn't even remember saying it, but Claire did. She smiled, small, soft, grateful, and leaned her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in a long time, felt the house exhale with us. No cliffhangers, no hidden files, no shadows behind doors, just morning quiet, clean. Hours, end of story.